Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket, coming off a victory Monday yesterday. A lot of stuff to talk about today. Okay, a little bit of Colts stuff. Zach Hicks joined me at 11 to talk more about the Colts and that win over the Jets. More stuff on Anthony Richardson. The college football playoff rankings come out tonight, so I've got some thoughts on that. I'm going to give you the most accurate depiction of what the 12-team playoff should look like as of right now. A little bit of stuff on IU, obviously, Top 10 Tuesday, so we'll do that. Pacers continue to struggle. So just like I said, a lot of stuff to get to today. Purdue continues their tough non-conference schedule tonight when they play against Marquette. But let's start with the Indianapolis Colts, who have to continue to run the football, right? Like when you go back and you watch that Jets game or you just ponder on that Jets game, one of the things that you should think about was how often the Colts ran the football. 35 times. Okay, that is a lot of running the football, which is what this Colts team needs to do, right? Jonathan Taylor, as good as Anthony Richardson was on Sunday, Jonathan Taylor is still the best player on this Colts offense. He's still the most explosive player on this Colts offense. And when you have a guy like that, he needs to get a lot of touches, right? He had 24 carries and he had, and they ran a little screen pass for him, right? That's 25 touches. That is 25 opportunities for Jonathan Taylor, the best and most explosive player on this Colts offense, to get loose and have a game-altering play. Okay, like that's 25 opportunities for him to rip off a 70-yard touchdown run, right? Because that's just the kind of player, that's the kind of running back that he is. You are hard-pressed to find a better running back in the NFL than Jonathan Taylor. Okay, so that is still my favorite adjustment that we saw from Shane Steichen. There was a clear and obvious goal of keeping Jonathan Taylor involved in that game no matter what happened. Okay, they ran him 13 times in the first half, and in the second half, even when the run wasn't great, they continued to give him the football, right? 11 carries in the second half. And they were down for a lot of the second half as well. Like, once again, truly impressive. Shane Steichen's commitment to the run, something that we haven't seen in previous weeks. Something else that we hadn't seen in previous weeks was Anthony Richardson, having these designed runs. We'd see him run, but, a lot of times it would kind of come off of scrambles. But on Sunday against the Jets, we saw legitimate designed runs for Anthony Richardson. If I remember correctly, I think all 10 of his rushes were on designed runs, right? He had 10 carries. He was extremely effective down near the goal line, kind of like what everybody kind of thought he would be before the year started, just getting down to the one and then running over a safety or a linebacker or whoever it was. And that's obviously a huge help in the red zone when you have a quarterback like Anthony Richardson who's capable of running the football. This is something that has got to continue. And Shane Steichen was asked about the run game yesterday and just kind of how important it is. Here is Colts head coach Shane Steichen talking about the run game and the importance of being committed to it.
I think overall it was good. We started off running the ball there early, like we talked about, and he was complaining. I think, like we said earlier after the press conference the other day, he was 7-9 there, for about 100 yards, getting some nice completions. And I think, running him a little bit gets him going as well, along with the rest of our football team. So we got to continue that momentum going forward.
One quick follow-up. How important is it to stay committed to the run? I know, like, JT got stonewalled a couple times, but just to give defenses that threat of the run, like how big was that to just kind of keep it balanced there, even in the second half a little bit?
Yeah, it's huge. You don't want to ever get away from the run game. You know what I mean? Obviously, sometimes if you're down and you got to throw it, it's part of the game. But to not completely get away from it and have those options with JT there and Anthony in the second half were big. But I thought our guys, like we talked about, adjusting and throwing the football there in the second half when we needed to throw it and make a play was huge by our team.
Shane Steichen right there talking about the importance of running the football and staying committed to the run. Once again, they ran it 35 times on Sunday. And that is the number for them. If they run the football 35 times, they're going to win a lot of games. And part of that is because you run the ball more when you're up. But even when the Colts were down in the second half, they stayed true and they stayed committed to the run with both Jonathan Taylor, who had 24 carries, and Anthony Richardson, who had 10. And I know that when I talk about Anthony Richardson running the football, some people don't agree, right? There are some people out there who don't like the idea of running Anthony Richardson because of the injury history, right? And all those things. And I get that. But he's 22. Run him now while he learns how to play quarterback. Okay. Like, this is what we saw from Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson early in their careers when they weren't as polished of passers. And even though Anthony Richardson was great on Sunday, he's not a very polished passer. And because of that, there needs to be more of a reliance on his legs. Okay. In 5 years, right? If he's still playing in the NFL, if he's still, if he winds up being the franchise guy at that point, and like, if you want to pull off of the running, then like, of course, because he'll be a bit older, he'll have some more miles on him. Like, this is a good thing about, or one of the good things of Anthony Richardson not playing a ton of football. He just doesn't have that many hits on his body. He just doesn't have as much mileage as, guys like Lamar Jackson, who played multiple years at Louisville, and Josh Allen, who played multiple years at JUCO in Wyoming. So like this is one of the good parts of Anthony Richardson not having played that much in his career. Okay. And it's like, well, Jonathan, the injuries. Like, let's look at the injuries last year. He had a couple concussions, right? Which are kind of weird. One of them came because he pulled up before running into the end zone and his head whipped onto the ground. And the other was an AC joint sprain in his shoulder. Both of those things, the concussions, the shoulder injury, are avoidable if he slides. Okay. And that is the one thing that he didn't do at all on Sunday. I wish that we would have seen him do that a little bit more, right? But on the goal line, put your shoulder down and go score. That's fine with me. Outside of that, slide, get out of bounds. Like, if he can just learn how to do that, he'll be fine. And this Colts offense becomes much more dynamic when he's able to run the football. Okay. And they need to run him now when he's 22, right? When he's 30, you don't run him like this. No way. Like, you don't. That doesn't make sense, because by the time he's 30, he'll have miles on him. And hopefully by that point, he'll be a legit thrower of the football, unlike right now. In order for this Colts offense to be dynamic and to score points and to kind of have this late season surge to make the playoffs, the Colts have to keep running the football. Okay. With both Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor, it just makes their offense so much better. Now, tonight, the college football playoff rankings are set to come out, and I can't wait. It's always highly anticipated, as I do every single week. On Tuesdays, I'm going to give you not only my top 10 Tuesday, the best 10 teams in the NFL, but I also do the proper college football playoff rankings. And last night, I played some basketball, got some buckets. It was great. And when I was done, I got on my phone, got on Twitter, and, some talking head gave a take on kind of how to rank teams, and people didn't like it. And college football Twitter was very much alive and well last night, discussing how to rank these teams. Like, it is very much a hot button topic right now. Shout out to Indiana, because if they didn't exist and they weren't having this incredible season, then I don't think that this would be a topic. Okay. And to put it simply, the scheduling in college football, because of the conference expansion, has not been fair. It is no longer about how deep is your conference. It's about who you play in your conference, right? Like, if Indiana was 10-0 and they had wins over Oregon and Penn State, no one would be questioning them. If Indiana was 9-1 and they had a win over Penn State and or Oregon and a loss to the other, then no one would be questioning them. There would be zero questions asked about Indiana if that was the case. But they've benefited from a weak schedule. I think every Indiana football fan would acknowledge that. How do you compare that Indiana schedule to the brutal schedule that Georgia has had to play? Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama, Texas, right? Those are 4 of the top 12 teams in the country. And I would argue that Georgia's 8-2 is more impressive than Indiana's 10-0 because of who they've played, even though Indiana is still undefeated. Like, how do you weigh those two things? How do you balance record versus who you've beaten and who you've played? That is the big question. And for me, I don't think it can solely be off record, because the goal of the College Football Playoff Committee is not to list the teams by the best record, right? It is a ranking, not a list. The College Football Playoff ranking is supposed to tell you and me who are the 12 best teams in the country, not the 12 most deserving, not the 12 teams with the most wins. It's not how it is. It is supposed to be simply the 12 best teams. Okay, if you asked me, Jonathan, what are the 10 best foods you've ever had? Okay, that's a pretty straightforward thing. Okay, the best foods, right? That's all that I would think about. I wouldn't rank them based on the frequency with which I ate them. I wouldn't rank them based off of how easy they are to make. It's a simple question. What is the best food that you have, right? That you've ever had? And if I made that list based off of how often I eat different kinds of food and how easy they are to make, then I would wind up leaving out some of the best food that I've ever had. Right? The quality of the food is the ranking, not the frequency, not how easy it is to make. It is simply the best foods. And the College Football Playoff ranking is the exact same thing. It's the best teams, right? Not the teams with the best resume, not the teams with the most wins, nothing like that. It is simply supposed to figure out who are the best teams, okay? And when it comes to the College Football Playoff ranking, the goal is quality. The 12 best teams in the country. That is what this is supposed to be. Okay, so records, of course, matter some. Okay, like if you're 7-3 right now, chances are you're not one of the 12 best teams in the country. Okay, but everything, like how some people want it to be, it can't be solely based on record. Okay, because if it's solely based on record, then let me call up my brother. Let's bring in my 18-month-old nephew, and he can put them in order based off of record. Like, it has to be about more than that. And this is something that college sports fans should understand, because we have March Madness every single year, and we have teams from mid-major conferences that win 30 games. We have them as like 12 seeds, right? And even though their record is better than teams like Alabama or Gonzaga or Indiana, because it's almost like who you play should matter. Okay, who you play and how you look should matter more than your record does. Like, BYU was ranked 6th last week. I think there's a high chance that they are not ranked in the top 12 this week. If one loss drops you 7 spots or more, then you shouldn't have been ranked in the top 12 in the first place, because you clearly weren't one of the 12 best teams, or at least you clearly weren't the 6th best team in the country. If one loss damages your ranking that much, it means you didn't pass the eye test. Okay, the goal, once again, of the College Football Playoff rankings is to find the 12 best teams. So the Big Ten and the SEC should get more teams in, especially the SEC, because it's the best conference in the country. And I'm sorry if you don't like that, but they have more ranked teams than anybody else. When you look at the top 15 ranked teams in the country, 6 of them are from the SEC. If you look at the top 20 ranked teams in the country, 7 of them are from the SEC. That's almost half of the conference, and then 2 other teams are getting votes in the AP poll to be ranked. It is the best conference. Therefore, Georgia's 8-2 is more impressive than Indiana's 10-0 based off of who they've played. Alabama's 8-2 is way more impressive than Penn State's 9-1. Okay, if you watch these teams, and if you watch the games, and if you watch how these teams perform against legit competition, then I find it pretty obvious that Georgia's better than Indiana. Therefore, Georgia should be ranked in front of Indiana. It's clear that Alabama, who's 8-2 with a loss on the road to Vanderbilt and a loss on the road to Tennessee, is better than Penn State. Like it just is. Like sit down and watch these teams play. Okay? Who you play and how you perform has to matter. That's why, I'm going to give you my top, how I would rank the top 12 teams. I still have Indiana ranked high even though they haven't played anybody good, because when you watch them play, it is evident that is a really good football team. Okay? Who you play and how you perform has to matter. It can't be all about record. Okay. And I understand that, there's some people that part of the pushback is, oh, well, you don't control your schedule. You do. You control your non-conference schedule. Okay. Like if Indiana, not picking on them, they're just the team here in the state that most people are a fan of. So I want to use them. Like if Indiana had gone outside of the conference and played LSU, Missouri, Alabama, whoever, and won or played them close, this would be no issue. Okay. And when it comes to the conference stuff, I get it. You don't make your conference schedule. And some people say, well, it's not their fault. But just because it's not their fault, like, doesn't invalidate the idea that their schedule's not good. Okay. Because the reality is that teams like Penn State, Indiana, Miami, and Boise State don't have any impressive wins. And that should matter. Unlike other teams like Alabama, who've beaten 4 ranked teams, Ole Miss, who has wins over multiple ranked teams, Georgia, who has wins over multiple ranked teams, including the best win in the country on the road in Austin, Texas. Okay? No one likes the SEC. I get it. They've dominated my entire life. They are the Kansas City Chiefs of the NFL. Right? But like it makes sense because when you look at the best players coming out of high school and when you look at the transfer portal, the best players just kind of wind up playing for SEC schools. So it makes sense that they would get the benefit of the doubt and that they would be the best conference. Okay. And I get it. Once again, the SEC, they are the Chiefs of college football. People are tired of the dominance. And so they complain about how good the conference is. And they look for any way to kind of variate away from them. But even though you don't like it, it doesn't change the reality that the SEC is the best conference with the best teams. So they should get more teams in. Just like how the Big Ten is better than the Big 12 and the ACC and every other conference but the SEC. Therefore, they should get more teams in. Okay, when the college football playoff rankings come out tonight, it's not going to look right. Okay, like it should just simply be the 12 best teams. Okay, records, of course, matter a little bit in that, but like watch the games. If we're just going to rate teams based off of record, then what is the point of watching the games over this 3-month period? Okay, rankings shouldn't only reflect records. It should reflect the 12 best teams, not just the 12 best records. And I find it interesting that people are pounding the table for Indiana and Penn State, but they also aren't pounding the table for Army. They haven't been ranked in the top 12 yet, and they're undefeated with 0 impressive wins. Sounds a lot like Indiana. Also, all the Indiana fans that are tired of this conversation around their team, play well on Saturday, go to Columbus, beat Ohio State, and all these conversations go away extremely, extremely quickly. Now, when we come back here in about 4 minutes, I'm going to give you the most accurate depiction of the college football playoff rankings, right? These are the legitimate 12 best teams in the country. I'm going to give you that list when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Just laid it out. The college ball playoff ranking should reflect the 12 best teams in the country. Shouldn't be all about record. Okay, it should be about the 12 best teams. If it's not about the 12 best teams, then what's the point in watching all these games? I can just wait till the end of the year and look at the records, and we can just kind of go from there. Joining me at 11, Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts. We're going to talk about that Colts win over the Jets on Sunday, the awesome performance that we saw from Anthony Richardson as well. But before that, let me give you the proper, most accurate depiction of the 12 best teams in the country. You know, the thing that the College Ball Playoff Committee is, supposed to give us, but won't. Number 12, I'm gonna put in Texas A&M. And look, they're 8-2. Their 2 losses are against 2 good ranked teams. Okay, they lost to South Carolina, who's awesome, by the way. Love watching them play. And they lost to Notre Dame as well earlier in the year. They also have a couple good wins over Missouri and LSU. Those are 2 good teams, even though they are no longer ranked. And more importantly, I think they're the 12th best team in the country. If they played anyone else that is ranked below them, I would expect for them to lose. Simple as that, because once again, the college ball playoff rankings are supposed to depict the 12 best teams in the country, not the 12 best records, because if that was the case, Army would be ranked number 1 alongside Indiana. So there's that. Number 11, SMU. Their 1 loss came to a good BYU team. They lost by 3, right? That's, BYU, it's a solid team. Okay, SMU went on the road, lost that game. They've gotten better as the year has gone on as well. That is also something that's important. It's important to watch these games and see teams improve and get better over the course of the season. And if you've watched SMU, then you know that they've improved and gotten better over the course of the season. Their quarterback Jennings can really play. That offense is absolutely electric. They've got a couple good wins over Pitt and Boston College. Boston College, not a bad football team up there in New England. So SMU at 11. And yes, if they played Texas A&M, I would take SMU to beat Texas A&M. Number 10, I've got Penn State. It's like, Jonathan, why do you have Penn State ranked 10th? They're 9-1. Look, Penn State's 10th because even though Ohio State only beat them by 7, I watched that game. I witnessed it. It's pretty clear that Penn State at home didn't look like they belonged on the same field as Ohio State. I'm sorry, if you fail to score an offensive touchdown, I'm just not going to have that much respect for you. I'm just not. I'm sorry. Okay? And Ohio State didn't play well that game, and they still won by a touchdown, right? They had the bad pick 6. They fumbled the ball out of the back of the end zone. Like, it was ugly. Ohio State didn't play well, and I still felt like they controlled that game the whole way. In addition to that, Penn State has squeaked out wins against bad teams, right? Like, they haven't done the Indiana thing where they've blown everybody out. No, Penn State's, they barely beat Bowling Green, right? That's just one example of these close non-conference games against bad teams that they've played. And in conference, when they've played the lesser teams of the Big Ten, the games have been close. They barely beat USC, who hasn't been very good this year. So I've got Penn State right there at number 10. Number 9, I've got Ole Miss. Jonathan, but they have 2 losses. How can you have 2-loss Ole Miss in front of 1-loss Penn State? Well, it's pretty simple for me. I think if Ole Miss played Penn State, Ole Miss would run Penn State out of the building. Really, no other way around it. I know they've lost 2 games. One of them came to Kentucky. And it's like, well, Jonathan, how do you have Ole Miss 9th if they lost to Kentucky? I don't know. How did the College Ball Playoff Committee have Notre Dame 8th last week with a loss to Northern Illinois, which is a significantly worse loss than Ole Miss's loss to Kentucky? Okay, like, sometimes college football teams lose bad games. Like, I'm not going to allow that to ruin what I know about Ole Miss, and that's that the offense is electric and they have a dominant defensive front that's capable of winning games for them. Okay, once again, I have Notre Dame ranked higher than Ole Miss, even though they have a worse loss to Northern Illinois, right? Ole Miss's, win against Georgia by 18 was highly impressive because Georgia is one of the 4 best teams in the country. Okay, the other thing about Ole Miss and why I have them ranked 9th is because I think they'd beat everyone ranked underneath them. Number 8, Notre Dame. Despite the loss to Northern Illinois, they have that win over Texas A&M. Okay, if you have a bad loss like Ole Miss and Notre Dame do, you better have a great win in there. And Notre Dame winning on the road against Texas A&M, in a tough environment is impressive. It's one of the most impressive wins of the season, right? They deserve to be ranked high. I also think that they're a good football team and that they'd beat Ole Miss and Penn State and SMU and Texas A&M again if they had to play against any of them. They have gotten better as the year has progressed. Riley Leonard has improved. That defense is nasty. Notre Dame, very impressive. That is a good football team in South Bend. I know they lost to Northern Illinois, but you can't allow that to ruin everything else that's happened for them this season. Number 7, Tennessee. Their 2 losses are at Arkansas, who's a tough, scrappy bunch. Go Hogs. And at Georgia. Georgia, once again, one of the 4 best teams in the country. Okay. Tennessee is, if you've watched them play, they are highly explosive on offense. They have a stout defense. They can run the football. I think they'd beat everyone ranked below them based off of how I've seen them perform and on the fact that they beat Alabama, who I have ranked in front of them. It's like, well, Jonathan, how do you have Alabama ranked in front of Tennessee even though Tennessee beat them? Okay. Great question. Great question. It's because teams get better as the year progresses. Like, have you watched Alabama over the last month? Have you seen them since their bye week? They've been wildly impressive. They have been awesome. They have clearly gotten better. Alabama played Tennessee a month ago. Okay. And while I respect Tennessee and while I think that Tennessee is a good football team, while I think that Nico Iamaleava has gotten better, like Tennessee as a whole doesn't feel like they've improved as much as Alabama has in the last month. Okay. And I know this because I've watched the games. I feel like if Alabama played Tennessee again, Alabama would beat them. Therefore, I'm going to rank them in front of Tennessee. You guys see how this works? We're ranking the best teams, not the most deserving, and we're taking the eye test and what teams have done on the field into account. We're not just looking at records. Okay, number 5. Here's where I have Indiana. No impressive wins. I have Indiana at 5 because I've seen them play football, and they are impressive. They struggled a bit against Michigan. So what? Alabama has struggled some this year. Penn State has struggled some this year. Notre Dame and also Northern Illinois. Ohio State barely, eked out a win against Nebraska. Okay, and so on. Like all of the best teams, because it's college football and it's 18 to 23-year-olds playing, like they're going to have weeks where they struggle, right? And if you watch Indiana play, even though they haven't beaten anybody great, scratch that. Even though they haven't beaten anybody good, right? Like their best win's Washington. Maybe it's Michigan. It's one of those 2 teams who are really not that great this year. If you've watched them play, then you know that they look like a top 5 team. Okay, and I think people are going to learn that on Saturday when they play Ohio State. Not saying that they're going to win, but I do think that they're going to give Ohio State a really tough time. Okay, number 4, I have Texas. Okay, just like Indiana, they don't have very many impressive wins. Okay, Texas's best wins probably over Vanderbilt, right? But I've seen them play. Like I've sat down and I've watched Texas play. And whenever I sit down and I watch Texas play, I say, geez, that team's good and talented. I would pick them to beat any team that I have ranked below them. Okay. I know the talent that they have. And forgive me for thinking about last year where a lot of these guys made it to the college football playoff. Forgive me for thinking about Coach Sarkisian, one of the best college football coaches in the country. Okay. And like for whatever reason, people want to change the criteria for how we rank teams every year. But when you rank teams, the point of the college football playoff rankings are to rank the best teams. And Texas is the 4th best team in the country. Number 3, I've got Georgia. Georgia has the best win in the country. It's the best one on the road in Austin, going to Texas. They beat them by 15. If you watch them play, I don't know how you watch them and say they aren't one of the 3 best teams in the country. I don't know how you can draw that conclusion. Okay, sit down, watch them play. See the talent and the aggressiveness and the speed on defense. When Carson Beck doesn't turn the football over 4 times, they tend to win a lot of football games. It's like, oh, but they lost to Ole Miss. Ole Miss, that's a good team. They played that game on the road. It's like, oh, but they lost to Alabama. They lost 41-34 on the road. Okay, and those losses don't erase the fact that they beat Texas and that they beat Tennessee and that they beat Clemson, 3 teams that are all ranked. Okay, Georgia is the 3rd best team in the country. Therefore, they should be ranked 3rd. Number 2, Ohio State. Ohio State's better than Georgia and every other team that I have ranked below them. That's why they're ranked 2nd. This is how rankings work, right? You rank the best, and then the 2nd best, and then the 3rd best, and so on. Okay, Ohio State looked much better than Penn State when they went on the road, which winning on the road is not an easy thing to do, especially against other teams that are talented like Penn State, who is, in my opinion, the 10th best team in the country. Okay, right? They looked much better than Penn State when they went on the road. Outside of the Nebraska game, they have done nothing but blow out bad teams, right? Like they've checked both of those boxes. Impressive win against good team, check. And blow out multiple bad teams. Check. Sure, the Nebraska game was weird, just like how the Indiana and Michigan game was weird. It's not going to completely and totally alter my perspective on the Hoosiers going forward. So I've got Ohio State at number 2. And then at number 1, I have the best team in the country. What a thought. Ranking the best team in the country, number 1. It's Oregon. Okay? They beat Ohio State. They beat Boise State. 2 really good football teams. Outside of Wisconsin, they've had their way with bad teams, okay? I would pick them to beat anybody in the country. Simple as that. If they rematched Ohio State today, I would take Oregon. Okay? If they played Georgia or Texas today, I would take Oregon. It's really that simple, okay? Like this ranking stuff doesn't have to be complicated. Okay? Who do you think the best team is? Put them at 1. Who do you think the 7th best team is? Put them at 7. Okay, and if there's someone lower, you're like, I think if they played that team, then I think they'd win. Okay, then flip them and put that team 7th. It's really that simple, okay? We get caught up in record and strength of schedule and all these things. We've watched these teams for 2.5 months now. I think it's pretty obvious if you've watched the games to know who's good and who isn't, okay? Like, no matter who they've played or who they've beaten or who they've lost to, for that matter. Okay, once again, Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois. But I've watched them play since then, and I know that they're one of the 12 best teams in the country. Ole Miss lost to Kentucky, but I've watched them play since then, so I know that they're one of the 12 best teams in the country. Penn State, look, they're going to be ranked 4th tonight, 3rd or 4th, more than likely. But I'm going to know that they aren't that good because I've actually watched them play football. Okay? Watch the games, form your opinion that way. Does resume and record and all those things matter? Of course it does, because the best team in the country isn't going to be 6-4 at this point in the year. But 8-2 Georgia should be ranked in front of a team like 10-0 Indiana, because I've sat down and I've watched Georgia play. And to me, it's pretty obvious that Georgia is just simply the better football team. And the better football team should be ranked higher. Simple as that. As we do on Tuesdays, we just rank everything. It's just what we do. So when we come back here in about 4 minutes, we're going to do Top 10 Tuesday. If there's enough time at the end of that, I'm going to get into the Pacers and their struggles just a little bit. And then at 11 o'clock, Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts. He's going to join the show. We're going to talk about the Colts and that big win over the Jets on Sunday. The playoff hopes are still alive. That's coming up at 11. But here in 4 minutes, I'm going to tell you the 10 best teams in the NFL.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts is set to join me here in about 20 minutes. He's joining me at 11. We're going to talk about that Colts win over the Jets on Sunday and Anthony Richardson's impressive performance. Before we get to that, though, it's Tuesday, therefore we do Top 10 Tuesday, ranking the 10 best teams in the NFL. And just like the college football playoff rankings, this isn't about record. This is about who is the best team. That's what it's about, okay? That's what rankings are, the best teams. And so that's what I'm about to give you right now. Number 10, the 10th best team in the NFL, it's the Minnesota Vikings. When Sam Darnold plays well, they look like they can beat anyone. Okay, he was awesome against the Titans, who have one of the better pass defenses in the NFL when you look at the numbers. He just looked awesome after having a couple weeks where it was like, all right, like, is the magic over? Is he about to turn back into a pumpkin? All that good stuff. He shows up, and he delivered in a big way on Sunday for the Vikings to improve to 8-2 on the season. There just still isn't enough trust there from me to rank them any higher because the quarterback position is so incredibly important, not only at the NFL level, but really at every level going down. Number 9, we've got the Arizona Cardinals. Simply because I've got them in front of the Vikings, simply because I trust Kyler Murray more than I trust Sam Darnold. Kyler Murray is quietly having an awesome season. Okay, like all that Call of Duty stuff is funny, but he's been great as of the last month. People forget how good this guy is. People forget how talented this guy is. Marvin Harrison Jr. is having a good year as a rookie wide receiver. Like the Arizona Cardinals, they can really play. And then you've got Jonathan Gannon, who has just found a way to put together a solid defense despite the lack of talent on that side of the ball. Like outside of Budda Baker, can you name anyone else that plays defense for the Arizona Cardinals? Probably not. I've got the Arizona Cardinals at 9. The team currently sitting atop the NFC West at 6-4. Number 8, I've got the Philadelphia Eagles. I should probably have them higher, but I don't trust Nick Sirianni. That's like that will be my holdup with them the entire way, because the guy who makes the ultimate decisions isn't trustworthy. Okay, like he's going to do something dumb and ruin their season at some point. At some point, his inability to make good decisions is going to negate the fact that they have Jalen Hurts, who's having an awesome year, and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, 2 outstanding wide receivers, and Saquon Barkley, who's one of the best running backs in the NFL, and a tough, nasty defense that's gotten better as the year has gone on. Once again, the Colts could have drafted Quinion Mitchell with the 15th pick. Like I said that they should have, but now he's just one of the best corners in the NFL already playing for the Philadelphia Eagles. I have them at number 8. I want to put them higher. I really do, but I just don't trust Nick Sirianni enough to put them higher up on the list. Number 7, I have the Los Angeles Chargers. Justin Herbert's a dude. Like, when you look at his numbers, they are incredibly underwhelming. They just are, okay? And part of that is because the Chargers don't throw the ball as much as they did last year, really any year in comparison. Like, last year, Justin Herbert threw the football on average 40 times a game. This year, he's closer to like 25, which is a good thing, right? Like, he's not the entire offense anymore, right? They've got a good offensive line. They can run the football at a high level. Jim Harbaugh, like him, don't like him, whatever. He's a good coach. It's not surprising. He's won everywhere he's been. He won at Stanford, Michigan, the 49ers. Now he's winning with the Chargers. And that defense, talented and nasty. The Chargers, I have them at number 7, coming off that win over the Cincinnati Bengals. Number 6, I've got the Green Bay Packers. When Jordan Love doesn't turn the ball over, they beat teams easily. And when Jordan Love does turn the ball over, they win anyway. It's really kind of impressive, and it speaks to how good they are on defense. It speaks to how great of an acquisition Josh Jacobs was, right? Like they can run the football when they need to. They've got multiple weapons, a good offensive line. That defense turns teams over, and they get stops, right? Pair that with Jordan Love, who's a little gunslinger-ish, right? When he plays great, they're definitely not going to lose. And Matt LaFleur is one of the better coaches in the NFL. Okay, if you can find ways to win with Malik Willis, I don't care if it's against the Titans and the Colts, you're a good coach. So Green Bay Packers are at number 6. Number 5, I have the Baltimore Ravens. People love the Baltimore Ravens. Okay, like everyone has this ginormous crush on them. Okay, and I get it because the Baltimore Ravens are sexy. They just are. Okay, running quarterback, Derrick Henry, good receivers, good tight ends, best offense. Well, one of the best offenses in the NFL. And then because they're the Ravens, when you look at the history of that franchise, you just kind of assume that they have this incredible defense, even though they don't. But they're 7-4 with some weird losses. They lost to the Steelers on Sunday, who didn't score a touchdown. They kicked 6 field goals, and that was enough to beat this high-powered, sexy Ravens offense, quarterbacked by Lamar Jackson. Okay, not only did they lose to the Steelers on a Sunday in which the Steelers did not score a touchdown, they lost to the Raiders. What? They lost to the Browns. What? There was just something not right with them. I don't know what it is, right? Because, as I've alluded to, that offense is really good, right? One of the best in the NFL. And just my entire life, the Baltimore Ravens have had an awesome defense. And it's just not there this year. Like, they have one of the worst, if not the worst, passing defense in the NFL. That's probably the biggest thing. That's probably the biggest reason why they've lost some weird games. But the passing defense I thought was really good on Sunday. Russell Wilson didn't do much of anything, really. So, 3 weird losses. Like I have to drop you in my rankings, and I have to move the Pittsburgh Steelers up, who were weird. And I don't like having them at 4. But every time I watch them, I walk away with the exact same impression of this offense is better with Russell Wilson. Mike Tomlin's one of the best coaches in the NFL. And more importantly, that defense is incredible. They're 8-2. They are 8-2. They are undefeated since making the switch to Russell Wilson. I'm not going to say what more needs to be said because it's about more than just record, but they've scored more points, and this defense has continued to be the best defense in the NFL. And with Russell Wilson, he doesn't have to be great. He doesn't have to be Seattle Seahawks Russell Wilson because they can turn around and they can hand the football off and run the football well. It's a good offensive line. They have good running backs. The addition of Mike Williams is huge. He and George Pickens, just these big physical receivers who can make contested catches. They're perfect for Russell Wilson. George Pickens has really taken off ever since they made the switch to Russell Wilson. So the Steelers, that's a good football team. They have enough on offense to complement this dominant defense that just made Lamar Jackson, a guy who was arguably leading the MVP race. I would argue it's been Jared Goff or Josh Allen, who's probably most definitely in the lead now after that win over Kansas City. I'm going to talk about them here in a second. But that Pittsburgh defense made Lamar Jackson look really bad on Sunday. And that has to be taken into account. I get it. Steelers offense, it doesn't feel great, but it's been better ever since Russell Wilson was made the starter. They're undefeated with him under center. So I have to put them at number 4 in front of the Ravens. Number 3, I have the Kansas City Chiefs. That's right. As of right now, I think there are 2 teams better than Kansas City. We can't just ignore the red flags all year. Okay, the defense struggled against the Bills, and the Bills didn't have Dalton Kincaid, a threat at the tight end spot, or Keon Coleman, who's had a good year as a rookie wide receiver out of Florida State. And the offense for the Chiefs hasn't been great. They've scored 30 points once this year. That's it. Offensively, they've been up and down. Everything that they do just feels like a grind. And yes, they found a way to win 9 times, but they aren't incredibly impressive. Last week, I talked about the Miami rule, and not the rule of you can't celebrate when you score touchdowns. The rule of if you continue to play close games, eventually something isn't going to go your way. And that finally happened for them on Sunday. They played the Bills, and things just didn't go their way. And part of it is because Josh Allen is the second best quarterback in the NFL, not that far behind Patrick Mahomes. There's a reason why the Bills are 4-1 against the Chiefs in the regular season. And I get it. It's the regular season. They have to do it in the playoffs before we really crown the Bills. But 4-1 against the Chiefs in the regular season is really impressive. Okay. And for whatever reason, they can't seem to do it in the playoffs, but the Chiefs have legitimate things that they need to address. Okay, like receivers, not great. I get it. DeAndre Hopkins, they brought him in, but he's old. He looks old. He moves old. So I don't know. I've just got a lot of questions about them. And if it wasn't for Mahomes and Reed and the respect that I have for them, I wouldn't have them third. I'd probably have them lower. But they have those two guys. So they're probably going to win the Super Bowl again just because they have the best coach and quarterback in the NFL. Number two, I've got the Buffalo Bills. They just beat the Chiefs. They beat them by 2 possessions without Dalton Kincaid or Keon Coleman. Like, they have to be ranked in front of the Chiefs, right? You're missing 2 important players on offense, and you still hang 30 points up against a good defense. Okay. And then defensively for the Bills, they held the Chiefs to 21 points without their best player, Matt Milano, who hadn't played at all this year. Okay. Like, that is a good team. Sean McDermott is a good coach. The trade for Amari Cooper seems like it's going to pay off. He was important on Sunday in that win. Khalil Shakir is having one of the best years of his career. And most importantly, they have a quarterback in Josh Allen who can put the cape on whenever he needs to. Okay, like we saw it on that last drive. It's 4th and 3. They don't take the field goal. Instead, they're like, you know what? We have Josh Allen, and we trust him to make a play for us. And, he then scrambles 20 yards for a touchdown, and he, in essence, puts the game away. The Bills are really good, and they're only going to get better when Matt Milano comes back here in these next couple weeks. The run defense hasn't been great. He should greatly shore that up when he shows up. So I've got the Buffalo Bills as the second best team in the NFL. Number one, the Detroit Lions, right? They're like the Indiana Hoosiers football team. They just blow out bad teams, right? They beat the Jags 52-6. They beat the Titans 52-14. They beat the Cowboys 47-9. They've blown out bad teams like Indiana football, but unlike Indiana football, they've also beaten good teams like the Cardinals, Vikings, Texans, and Packers. Okay, the defense, even though they lost Aiden Hutchinson, who was pacing to win Defensive Player of the Year, the defense has still found a way to be impactful and to be really good. Zadarius Smith finally suited up. He's playing now. They acquired him from the Browns earlier in the year. He had half a sack on Sunday. They are as complete a team as you'll find. Okay, I think everyone who watches the Lions knows how great they are. If I had one concern for them, it would be, can Jared Goff put on the cape when he needs to? That is the only question that I have for them, because we haven't seen him do it this year. Then again, we haven't had to see him do it because the Lions are really good. Okay, the defense is tough, the offense is tough, but in the playoffs, potentially in the Super Bowl, can Jared Goff put on the cape like a Josh Allen, like a Lamar Jackson, or like a Patrick Mahomes? Because usually to win the Super Bowl, your quarterback's got to put on the cape once or twice to make that happen. Can Jared Goff do it? I don't know. We're going to find out, and I can't wait to see this unfold. Speaking of unfolding, how's the rest of the Colts season going to unfold? I'm very intrigued to kind of hear Zach Hicks' thoughts on it after that awesome performance from Anthony Richardson. He joins the show when we come back here in about 4.5 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you guys are having a nice week, a nice little victory Monday yesterday. As always, on Tuesdays at 11 o'clock, Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts joins the show. Zach, what's going on, man?
Oh, man, I'm feeling pretty good right now. I mean, exactly what we needed on Sunday. So I'm doing pretty good right now, man.
Exactly what we needed. I felt so good watching that game. Like, that is the most fun I've had watching a Colts game in years.
It was in the fourth quarter for sure. Going into the fourth quarter, it was not super fun because it looked like, they were up 13-0. The defense hadn't allowed a first down for a majority of the first half. Like, it was a pure shutdown performance, and it looked like the Colts were going to coast to like a 20-point victory. Then the defense got pretty leaky. The offense had some of their procedural issues. And we go into the fourth quarter down 8, and I'm like, man, how did this game get so far away from them? And then it became, the exact thing that we needed in that fourth quarter, where Richardson goes down and leads 2 quick touchdown drives, and the Colts are able to win the game. I mean, it's like it was the most fun fourth quarter I've had in a long time, and by and large, like the most fun game I've had in a long time watching the Colts, because again, it's everything we've been waiting for with Anthony Richardson. Like, this was the game. I think I said on this show back before he got benched, I was like, just give me one game. Give me one game where I can really hang my hat on, where from start to finish, the counting stats look good, the eye test looks good, the film looks good, where everything's looking good for him and I can really see what he can be in the NFL. And this was the game. Like, this was the game right here. And I know some people will say, like, oh, it's just the Jets, like the bad Jets. Like, this isn't like this Jets defense is horrendous. Like, they've definitely dropped off since the firing of Robert Saleh. But it's not like this horrendous defense, like the worst defense in football. If anything, they were a horrible run defense coming into this game and a perfectly fine, if not good, pass defense. And the Colts shredded them through the air and struggled running the ball on them. So, yeah, Anthony Richardson came out and proved all the doubters wrong in one game. Like, obviously there's more to go from here, but he gave us the one game we needed. And honestly, I couldn't be more happy for this type of game. Like, again, this is everything we needed from him in his return to the starting lineup.
Yeah, I completely agree. Joined by Zach Hicks, host of Locked On Colts, talking Colts and that win over the Jets. How many times does he have to do this for us to forget all of the bad things that have happened since he showed up here? And in terms of his play,
I mean, if he's putting out performances like that on Sunday, I mean, I think people are kind of. It's funny. Like, during the game, I was like, okay, people are probably gonna overrate this performance and use it to forget everything that happened earlier this season, which I get. Like, fan brain, you want to be optimistic and excited, so everyone's gonna start calling him, a superstar quarterback based off this one game. But I've actually been surprised at the relative calmness, I guess, of some of the fan base. Like, I've seen some people be like, yeah, it was a good bounce back game from him. We all needed that, but like, we need to see more going forward. Do people realize how rare it is for a quarterback to have 300 total yards and 3 touchdowns at over 10 yards of air yard targets? Like, he was over a 50% success rate on offense. They were moving the ball consistently all game. He had 0 turnover worthy throws. He had, the 1 turnover on the fumble, but aside from that, he protected the ball. He wasn't throwing checkdowns. He was ripping the ball down the field with great accuracy and poise, and he was converting in the red zone. I mean, if he has games like this, if he even gives me one more game like this, then I'm super pumped, because this was like an A+ performance. Like, I'm not saying that this should be the norm for him going forward, because this is a fantastic game. Sure, there could have been better moments in the second and third quarter, and I don't think it was entirely on him. Like, the fumbled snap in the backfield was certainly on him, and then the fumble on the lost fumble at the beginning of the third quarter was on him and the pass rush. But aside from that, I mean, it was his best day as a passer in the NFL, maybe in college too, that we've ever seen from him. He was in control. He was poised. He was ripping it down the field. He was converting in intermediate, deep, short even. I mean, he had like 2 misses short, but besides that, was throwing the ball with accuracy all day. I mean, this was a fantastic game. So I understand wanting to be a little bit, cautious, and I'm not saying that this should be the new standard for Richardson by any means, but if he can put up like another game like this, I would gladly take it. I would even gladly take a step down from this, where you're tossing 200 yards, rushing for 20, 30, 40, whatever it is, a touchdown or two in the game, and if you can keep the turnovers down low, like that's a fine game right there. It doesn't need to be 300 yards and 3 touchdowns every single week, but I'll surely take that. I mean, this was again, I think people are trying to cool themselves a little bit, but we can look at this game and say what it was. I mean, he was 9 of 11 on intermediate passes in this game for like nearly 200 yards passing on them. I mean, he was absolutely dealing in the intermediate part of the field and just shredding apart this Jets defense. And it makes it even more impressive that it was his first game back from being benched for 2 weeks. So, yeah, it was a great game, man. Like, I'm not trying to say, again, like this shouldn't be the expectation going forward is being like this. But it's pretty optimistic, pretty promising to see that he's capable of doing this.
Why was he so much better as a passer?
He just looks so much more calm out there. I know he said it in his post-game comments where he said it was the most relaxed he'd ever been on the football field, and you could really see it back there in the pocket. I mean, he was getting to his back foot. He was trusting his first read. He was even looking off defenders with his eyes and his shoulders really well to open up some windows. And when he saw what he wanted to see, he was confidently stepping in and ripping some passes. It wasn't the getting too excited like he was early in the season and losing the mechanics part of it and sailing passes. Like, we didn't see him sail. I don't think he sailed any passes in this game. Maybe one in like the second quarter when pressure was in his face. But besides that, I don't think he sailed a single pass in this game. He was just delivering out there, man. You could really tell it's like, you talk about playing basketball and stuff. It's kind of like when you're on a roll as a basketball player, you're just kind of in that mode where you feel like you can't miss. It felt like every throw from him in this game was him stepping into it confidently, and he just couldn't miss. I mean, how many off-target throws did we really see from him in this game? Like, truly off-target throws. There was the Granson one early, maybe the 2-point conversion attempt to Mo, but again, I felt like that was more of just misjudging how slow Mo Alley Cox is on the football field.
Yeah,
I mean,
not great.
I love Mo, but like, it's hard to put a ball out in front of him and expect him to run under it because he's just not that kind of athlete on the football field.
Yeah.
But besides that, like, there really weren't many missed throws. Like, he was just dealing. And it's not like his receivers were catching all these super contested passes. I mean, these were on the money and these guys were making plays. So, I mean, he was just on a roll all game long. Really looked confident out there, looked relaxed, looked poised. The way he was moving in the pocket for the most part looked really good. And, I mean, he was unfazed in that fourth quarter. I mean, down 8 points against a pretty solid Jets defense and Aaron Rodgers on the other side of the field. Not many quarterbacks could step up to the plate like that and just deliver like he did. And he put together his best 2 drives of the season when the Colts needed it most. Because if they lost that game, the playoffs are pretty much out the window, and most of the rest of the season is out the window. I'm not saying that winning that game gets them in the playoffs, but it keeps them in the conversation going forward. And so they desperately needed him to perform like that, and he really stepped up when they needed it.
Yeah, that game coming up against the Broncos just looks more and more important the closer and closer that we get to it. Joined by Zach Hicks, host of Locked On Colts. You can follow him on Twitter at ZachHicks2. So in addition to Anthony Richardson being just awesome on Sunday, like I cannot stress enough just how great he was. Shane Steichen had a day as well. I thought the best thing that he did was really stay committed to the run. Like, they ran the ball 35 times, even though they were down 8 entering the fourth quarter, even though it wasn't super profitable on the ground. That was my favorite thing that he did. What was the best adjustment that you saw from Steichen this week?
Yeah, it was a very different scheme for Anthony Richardson this week. And I'm sure that Shane Steichen did a lot of soul searching over these past couple of weeks, because when you have a situation like that where you are benching the player who's supposed to be the face of your franchise, even if he's doing everything wrong, that still partly falls on you as the head coach and as the executive of the team. So I'm sure he looked back at the film and tried to see, where did a lot of this go wrong? And you kind of saw a more reserved type of offense. And I mean that in a very positive way in terms of they came out with more 12 personnel, more heavy sets with 2 tight ends on the field. They committed to the run game. Even when the run game wasn't working, they were committed to the run game so they could get into more profitable third down opportunities. So instead of being in 3rd and 15 on every other series, we maybe saw them in that like once or twice in this game, maybe. And that was from self-inflicted wounds there in like the 2nd and 3rd quarter. For the most part, they kept it to 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9. Those aren't perfect opportunities. Like you obviously want to be 3rd and 1 and 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, but it's still positive improvement compared to where they were. The run game wasn't really working whatsoever, but because their insistence on staying into it, they were able to build some of their play action stuff off of it and get Richardson moving. They were able to get the offense kind of in more of that rhythm that works for Richardson. Again, just running so much play action so he can just get into his mechanics a little bit cleaner. You can tell that he really likes throwing off a play action compared to not. And I think that really helped Richardson get into a rhythm. So yeah, it was a very different offense in terms of, it wasn't spamming Yankee calls every 5 plays like it was against Houston, where Pierce is running the deep over or the deep corner or something like that, and Pittman's running the deep over. It wasn't that every other play. It was a lot more measured and a lot more reserved on offense and taking advantage of the Jets linebackers over the middle of the field, a lot more running the ball and a lot more play action off of 12 personnel. And they were able to build some good things off it. And I think, bringing back the QB run game really helped. I don't think it was, perfect by any means. And I would like for them to take out some of those interior quarterback runs. There was a lot of QB runs up the middle that I don't think are as necessary, but like the QB sweep stuff, the QB like runs to the outside where you're getting Richardson one-on-one with corners in the open field. Keep that, please keep that forever going forward, because I want corners to have to come up and tackle this 250-pound quarterback that runs a 4.4. And you could tell in the red zone that that's an impossible task for these little corners to try to get him. I mean, who was that? Jalen Mills. That was a truck stick in the end zone on that first run. That was brutal. Oh my gosh. I felt bad for him. Yeah, it was a huge collision. And look, if Richardson's going to take a hit, I'd rather him be the one delivering the hit than being the one taking the hit. So, yeah, he made that defender pay for trying to tackle him. And then you saw on the game winning, it was game on the line, 40 seconds left, Richardson running outside. Those corners didn't want to tackle him because of that first run where Jalen Mills got decked. So the second touchdown run with 40 seconds left, got to have it. They just kind of let him run into the end zone because he's just that imposing of a runner. So overall, I think it was a good game plan. I do think they got a little stuck in the mud again there in the 2nd and 3rd quarters, but I did like the consistency to keep to the run game. I liked the 12 personnel usage and the play action usage, and then just getting back to the QB run because, look, at the end of the day, you drafted Richardson as high as you did because of his rush threat, because he has the big arm and those intangibles, but also because he can run. And I understand being a little cautious with the run game because of his injury history, but at the end of the day, he's not going to work if you don't use that part of his game. It doesn't need to be 10 times like it was this past game. You can bring that back down to 5, 6, 7, but you still need to run him in these games. If he gets hurt, he gets hurt at this point. It's just part of who he is, though. You don't want to put a muzzle on like Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts or any of those guys by having them not run. If they get hurt, they get hurt. That's part of their game. It's just part of what makes them good. If you tell Richardson not to run, you're going to get a less effective quarterback. So getting him out there, getting him running, get him in that rhythm early, and then he was able to deliver later in the game.
Yep, I think you're exactly right. And even looking at look, if it would just slide from time to time, that's that would solve, I think, a lot of the concern with him running. And because my thing is he's 22, he hasn't played a lot of football. If there's any time to run him, it's right now. Hopefully in 5 years, he's improved as a passer enough that you don't have to run him as much. But right now, while he's still learning the ropes and you still want to score points and win games, you have got to run him. And so I'm completely with you. Joined by Zach Hicks, host of Locked On Colts. I thought the other thing impressive about the Colts on Sunday and just the offense was how well the ball was spread around. It felt like everyone was used properly, if that makes sense. Like all of Alec Pierce's receptions were down the field. Michael Pittman Jr.'s receptions were him working the middle of the field. Josh Downs was kind of a mix. He had the one big 31-yard reception at the start, but outside of that, it felt like kind of more short, quick things where he's matched up on linebackers. A.D. Mitchell was able to use his speed on the drag route. Did you kind of notice that as well? Did you also feel like all of the receivers were kind of used the way that they should be?
Yeah, and they all felt like they were on time with Richardson too. Like, again, it didn't feel like any of these throws were off time or like miscommunications. Everything was where it needed to be. The receivers were where they needed to be. They hit their landmarks and they made plays on the ball. I mean, outside of Michael Pittman Jr.'s drop right before the half that potentially cost the Colts 3 points. Aside from that, these receivers really made plays in the passing game for Anthony Richardson. They got to their landmarks. They made plays when they got targeted. I mean, shout out to Alec Pierce. I know we want to shout out to Josh Downs because Josh Downs was fantastic and he's the bona fide guy in this receiver room. But Alec Pierce, man, I mean, two really big catches on intermediate plays down the field with DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner hanging all over him. And then when the game mattered the most, he told Richardson, "Hey, I think Palm's coverage is coming. They're going to try to jump Josh Downs. I will be available on the hole shot." And Richardson trusted him and hit him on that hole shot. I mean, fantastic throw, fantastic catch. If only Pierce could have made the guy miss, but then again, if he made the guy miss, then the Jets would have had more time to go down and score. So I'll take it because we got the good result at the end. But that's what you want to see out of your receiver. So, yeah, Pierce was effective as the deep guy. Downs was your get open guy. Pittman over the middle. It all really worked for this wide receiver room. Now, if I want to be hypercritical, they need something out of the tight end room. I don't think they're going to get it with this group of guys.
They had 4 receptions as a group. That's not terrible.
Yeah, it
wasn't great,
really,
but yeah.
Yeah, I think where you really see it is on the third downs where they just don't have that guy at tight end who can get open. They just don't have it this year. Ogletree and Moe are good blockers. Granson, I think he's been pretty ineffective this season. So it's just tough to really operate that way at tight end. But one thing I will say too, I'm also being hypercritical. We need more A.D. Mitchell snaps. we need, we can't have just 12 snaps out there. This kid is coming into his own. He's playing good football. His one target went for 33 yards. We need to find a new way to get him on the field. For me personally, I don't think there's any reason why he shouldn't be on the field on any third down. Like every single third down, he needs to be out there. I'm cool with him not being out there on early downs because you want to run the ball, and him and your whole wide receiver room, he's probably your worst run blocker. But he, besides Josh Downs, is your most consistent guy at getting open. And when you have your young quarterback back there, give him 2 options that are going to be open on every third down. Josh Downs is great, but if they want to bring 2 guys on him, your next best option is probably a contested throw to Pittman or a contested throw to Pierce, or you could get A.D. Mitchell on the field and have an open throw to A.D. Mitchell. Now, again, even if he drops it, I'd rather have an open throw to A.D. Mitchell than have a contested throw to somebody else. It worked this past game, but if I could just grab Shane Steichen by the collar and say one thing to him, I'd be like, "Look, man, get A.D. Mitchell on the field on third down. I don't care if it only ends up being like 15 snaps, but make sure they're snaps that count. Like, get him targeted on those third downs because he's always open, man." I mean, he dusted Sauce Gardner from that mesh concept, and it really wasn't that. It wasn't much mesh traffic that really led to that separation. That was just Mitchell running away from him, and I think that just shows what he can do on those third downs. And we even saw in this game, like the Colts weren't great on third down in this game, but all of their conversions when it came to throwing the ball on third down came to Josh Downs or the one to A.D. Mitchell on that mesh concept. Those are your third down guys. When it comes to third and long or third and intermediate, get A.D. Mitchell on the field. But aside from that mini rant there, I do think the receivers played well in there, especially Pierce and Downs. Those guys are just so good in their role and just fantastic players for Richardson to have.
So I guess my one question would be, if you put A.D. Mitchell on the field on third downs, who do you take off the field?
See, this is where the politics of football come in because look, we know the answer to this, but the problem is that guy's making a lot of money right now.
That's right.
The answer is you take Pittman off the field on third downs, like at least this year, because Pittman's just not fully healthy. Like, even though he looked a little bit better in this game, he's still not fully healthy out there. And a big part of his playing style is he's so much more physical and stronger than whoever he's going against that he can win over the middle of the field. But when he's not 100%, it's a little bit more difficult for him to get in and out of those breaks and out-muscle defenders. So when he's like this, he's not really much of an asset when it comes to third down offense. So if you're really trying to get first downs on third down and not trying to play the politics of it, you get A.D. Mitchell on the field, or you just get 4 wide receivers out there and stop messing around with this tight end group that really all they do is chip. My big brain idea is just have Michael Pittman Jr. be the tight end on third downs and chip on the end, and then do like a little underneath thing so A.D. Mitchell and Josh Downs can get open. Like that way Pittman can stay on the field and we can say he's toughing it out and be even a big part of what they're doing and chip on the edge. But then you have 2 guys who can separate and get open. That, I don't know. I do think there are ways they can do it, but you got to get 8. Even if it's take Pierce off the field on like 3rd and like 6s and 3rd and 7s, like I think Pierce is playing great football. But who's going to get open on 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8? It's going to be Mitchell. Like Pierce can catch the ball, don't get me wrong, but Mitchell, if you put him on an island against someone, even against Sauce Gardner, he's going to get open. Like I just want that on the football field,
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Joined by Zach Hicks, host of Locked on Colts. I want to switch over to the defensive side of the ball. I know the Jets scored 27 points. I thought the defense played really well. I mean, they gave up obviously the one long drive before the half, but the other 2 touchdowns that they scored, one was off the fumble, one was off of the Ashton Doolin catch interference that shouldn't have been called. So yeah, like what'd you think of the defense on Sunday?
Yeah, I think the defense largely played as well as they have these past 5 weeks, except they were missing the big turnover forced and communication in the red zone. Those were the 2 big issues in this past game, and that's what led to a tougher showing than what we've seen these past 5 weeks. But by and large, I think they were just as good as what they've been. I mean, they got after Rodgers. They pressured him a good bit despite Rodgers getting the ball out of his hand pretty quick. I mean, anytime Rodgers had to go past his first read, he was under duress and wasn't looking good back there in the pocket. And I think that's the Colts pass rush was playing pretty well, especially Kwity Paye and Laiatu Latu off the edge. Both had really good games. But yeah, they just were missing the turnover aspect. And they, in the red zone, they had 2 really bad communication gaps that led touchdowns. If they just hold strong on one of those red zone possessions and don't give up a touchdown and force a field goal, it's a much different game. So overall, yeah, I think it was fine. I do think it certainly gets overblown a little bit because they gave up 27 points. It certainly wasn't perfect. But again, really where they got hurt in this game was doing the pressure stuff and doing the sim pressure stuff because Rodgers was so quick getting the ball out of his hands when he saw that. And it's kind of a catch-22 because the one thing that everyone's always complained about with Gus over the years is not being creative enough and not blitzing enough. So he kept that creativity and that blitzing in this game, and it came back to bite them. So if you want to complain about that, he can go back to being the stagnant cover 3 guy if you want him to do that. I mean, this is kind of what you get when you have this creative and blitz-heavy approach on defense. But overall, they didn't give up too many big plays. They had a couple communication gaffes and stuff like that. But they showed up on that final drive, Kwity Paye with a sack, and I think it was 2 sacks on the final drive, I think is what it was for Paye. So they really showed up on that final drive and they were able to get the job done. So much to improve upon. That's certainly not gonna track this next week against the Detroit Lions, where Gibbs and Montgomery are both 100-yard rushing threats in the first quarter, probably because they're that good of players. So you got to be wary of them. But I think it wasn't the worst performance. It certainly looks worse than what it was.
Agreed. I was going to ask, how quickly do the Lions bring us back down to earth?
Yeah, it's tough, man. Yeah, you're going against a buzzsaw. They're
the best team in the NFL.
I mean, I don't know if we've seen a team this dynamic in the regular season in a couple years. Because even the Chiefs, the last few years, like they usually are playing at like 75% speed until the playoffs, and then that's when they really turn the corner. And it's crazy to think we're saying that about back-to-back Super Bowl champions in the Kansas City Chiefs. But yeah, I don't know if we've seen a team like this just dynamic on offense and even defense this year too, in a long time in the regular season. I mean, they need to average 38 points per game down the stretch to be the highest scoring offense in the history of football. And since their bye week, they've been averaging 38 points per game. So they can certainly do it. This is a dynamic offense. They have one of the best vertical threats in Jamison Williams. They have one of the best intermediate to short threats in the Sun God, Amon-Ra St. Brown. They have one of the best offensive lines in football. Jared Goff is dealing the best running back tandem in football. On defense, they play hard and fast. They have Brian Branch, who's one of the best defenders in the league, like should be up there for Defensive Player of the Year this season. Kirby Joseph's a good player. It's a really, really good Lions team. One of the best coach teams in the league, too, with Aaron Glenn and Dan Quinn and Ben Johnson. I mean, this is just a dynamic team that has Super Bowl aspirations. So, look, if the Colts can just trade some punches with them and make it a competitive game, I will take that as a win. This is certainly not a game I'm expecting a win for the Colts. Just make it competitive and show them that you're not going to be walked all over like the Lions have done to some teams this season, and I'll be pretty happy with that. You know, we don't like to say moral victories are good here, but I mean, when you're going against a team like this, I will take kind of a moral victory against the Detroit Lions.
Yeah. Last thing, and I'll let you go. For me, you know, it's the Colts win if ... For me, it's the Colts win if Anthony Richardson's awesome again, and if Jared Goff has another 5 interception game like he did against Houston.
Yeah, it's Colts win it's Colts win if Richardson is at his best possible and the Lions decide they want to beat themselves. Like that's probably it. If Dan Quinn gets a little too fancy and aggressive with his fourth down stuff and it comes back to bite them, and Jared Goff forgets how to play football and they just look sloppy, and if Richardson plays like he did last week, and then they got a shot in this game. I mean, the Lions are good, man. They're just a good football team. It's tough. The Colts are still figuring some things out on both sides of the ball, where the Lions are this well-oiled machine. So it's going to take a lot to win this game. Ultimately, the Colts' playoff hopes come down to the other games. The rest of the season, the other 5 games, like those are essentially must-win games, the other 5, regardless of what happens here against the Detroit Lions. So come out here, stay healthy, exchange some punches with the Lions, learn some valuable things about who you are as a team, and then get ready for those next 5, because those next 5 will determine your fate for this season.
That's exactly right. Zach, thanks for your time as always, man. You were great.
Of course, buddy. See ya.
See ya. That is Zach Hicks. Check out his stuff at Locked On Colts. You can follow him on Twitter at Zach Hicks and then the number 2. He does just a great job of covering the Colts. Good guy as well. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, college football playoff rankings come out tonight, and a lot of contention over how to rank these teams. I'm going to tell you how it should be done when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thanks again to Zach Hicks for coming on the show to talk Colts. Always a blast when he comes on the program. Now, tonight will be a blast because the college football playoff rankings are going to come out. Indiana's going to be ranked really high. They'll be like 5th. It'll be great. And how do you rank these teams? Right? It is a major topic right now, and we're going to talk about it today because the rankings are going to come out tonight. Like, how do you rank these teams? Because the scheduling simply is not fair. Okay? It's not. It's no longer about what conference you play in. It's about what teams you play in your conference because these conferences are 16, 18 teams large, and so you don't play everyone. You just don't. It's impossible for that to happen. Right? And this is something that people are really passionate about. People are pounding the table for Indiana. People are pounding the table for Penn State over these 2-loss SEC teams that have played incredibly tough schedules. Okay? Like for me, I would argue that 8-2 Georgia is more impressive than Indiana's 10-0 because of who they've played. Right? I get it. Indiana's still undefeated and all that stuff. But like, how do you weigh these two things? How does the committee balance record versus who you've played and who you've beaten and how you've looked? Like that's the big question. And I would argue that it has to be more than just record. It has to be. And then, I don't think this is a crazy concept because everyone loves March Madness. Right? And for some reason, we don't complain when a mid-major team that wins 30 games is a 12 seed, even though they've won more games than, Alabama or Gonzaga or Indiana. We don't complain because we know that the Alabamas, Gonzagas, and Indianas have played better competition. Their wins mean more because they've played better teams, unlike that mid-major school that's won 30 games. It has to be about more than just record. It has to be about who you play against, right? Like that has got to matter. And when I look at the college football playoff rankings, I ask the question, what is the point? What is the college football playoff committee ranking? And the answer is the best teams. Who are the best teams in the country? That is what the college football playoff committee is in the process of trying to figure out. And if I asked you to make a list of your 10 favorite foods, you would sit back and you say, okay, what are the 10 best foods I've ever had? You wouldn't think about anything but that. Okay? You would be like, what does the food taste like? That is ultimately the ultimate criteria that you're going by. You wouldn't think about how often you eat the food. You wouldn't think about how easy it is to make the food or anything like that. You would just be solely looking at what are the best foods that I've eaten, right? Because if you filter in how easy the food is to make, or if you factor in how often you eat that food, then you would wind up with some of the best foods you've ever had not being on the list. Because things that shouldn't matter in your criteria, you're allowing to impact your ranking. When it comes to college football, I think that we're doing the same thing. Like I think this should just be way more simple than what it is. Who are the 12 best teams? The goal is to rank quality, not resume or anything like that, or records. The goal is to rank the 12 best teams in the country. So, of course, records are going to matter a little bit, right? Because the best team in the country isn't 5-5 right now. It's just not the truth. But it can't be entirely based upon record like some people think that it should be, right? Like if we just want it based on record, like let me call up my brother. We can grab my 18-month-old nephew, and we can have him rank the teams because he's very capable of putting the teams in order based on their records, right? And if you do that, if you rank teams based on records, it's not a ranking. It's just a list. It's not the same thing. Who you play and how you perform should matter. Like the fact that BYU was ranked 6th last week, and they will likely not be ranked in the top 12 this week, is insane to me. It's insane because clearly BYU wasn't the 6th best team in the country before last week. If you've watched them play, then you would know that. And the fact that one loss is probably going to drop them 7 spots or more, like that tells me that they shouldn't have been ranked sixth in the first place. Like you clearly weren't one of the 12 best teams in the country if one loss damages your ranking that much. The goal, once again, is to find the 12 best teams. So the Big Ten and the SEC should get more teams in, especially if their schedule is tougher. Like Georgia's 8-2 is more impressive than Indiana's 10-0 because of who Georgia has played. Alabama's 8-2 is more impressive than Penn State's 9-1 because of who Alabama has played. Also, if you watch the games, if you watch them, like Georgia looks like they're a better team than Indiana. If you watch the games, it looks like Alabama's a better team than Penn State. And people won't like that take, right? Because Indiana's undefeated and Penn State's 9-1 and all that good stuff. But the wins that Georgia and Alabama have are more impressive than anything that Penn State and Indiana have. That's just the reality of the situation. Georgia's win over Florida, like their fifth best win, is a better win than anything that Penn State and Indiana have. Who you play has to matter, right? And I understand that you don't get to make your schedule, but that doesn't change the reality that teams like Penn State, Indiana, Miami, and Boise State don't have any impressive wins, unlike teams like Alabama, Ole Miss, and Georgia. Okay, now no one likes the SEC. I get it. They're like the Chiefs in the NFL. They've been dominant for so long that no one likes them and they want them to lose and they're tired of seeing them. And so they complain about everything when it comes to that team. Okay. But once again, you're complaining and you not liking the SEC doesn't change the reality that the SEC is the best team in the country. It doesn't change the reality that when you look at this week's AP poll, 5 of the top 12 ranked teams in the country are in the SEC. It doesn't change the reality that 7 of the top 20 teams ranked in the country, once again, according to the AP poll, it doesn't change the reality that 7 of them are in the SEC. Almost half the conference is ranked. The next closest conference is the Big Ten with 5 teams ranked. That's it. So the Big Ten and the SEC, because their conferences are better, should get more teams in. Just no way around it. Who you play, how you look, how you perform has to matter, right? That's why with Indiana, I'm probably not going to have time to do my top 12. I did it earlier in the show. Like I put Indiana at 5th because when I watch them play and I watch how they've blown out bad teams, it's evident that they're one of the 5 best teams in the country. How you play, how you perform, and how you look has to matter. Like Penn State squeaking out victories over Bowling Green should matter on some level. Like I get it. They won. That's great. But if you watch them play, you really want to sit here and tell me that they're the 4th best team in the country? That's probably where they're going to be ranked this week. At some point, who you play, who you beat, how you perform, those things have to matter. Okay? It can't just be all about record. Because if it was all about record, then Army would be the 3rd ranked team in the country because they're one of 3 undefeated teams remaining. It has to be about more than that. It has to be about who you play and who you beat. And I get it. You don't control who you play, even though you do control your non-conference opponents. If you want to make sure that this isn't an issue for you, then schedule a tough out-of-conference game. That has saved Notre Dame's season. The fact that they scheduled a tough, they play that ACC schedule. Anyway, that game against Texas A&M is why Notre Dame is ranked in the top 12, despite that ugly loss to Northern Illinois. Who you play, how you look, how you perform has to matter. Simple as that. The rankings should reflect the 12 best teams in the country, not the 12 most deserving, not the 12 most impressive resumes. No, the 12 best teams. Okay, like when all these guys fill out their ballots and they rank the teams 1 through 25, they should put whoever they think the best team in the country is at number 1, whether it's Georgia with 2 losses or it's Oregon with 0 losses or Indiana with 0 losses or Ohio State with 1 loss on the road to Oregon that happened a few months ago. If they're of the opinion that Ohio State has gotten better since then and they are now better than Oregon was at this point, then they should put Ohio State in front of them. Okay, the goal is to rank the best teams, not the most deserving or anything like that. Rank the best teams. Okay? Like, what is the point in watching and consuming all these games if the way that teams play doesn't matter? What's the point? Someone please tell me. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, I've got some thoughts on the Colts and something that they just need to continue to do to win games this year. Maybe some more thoughts on the college football playoff rankings if we have time. But when we come back here in about 4 minutes, I've got more thoughts on the Indianapolis Colts.
More winners, more often. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you guys are having a nice week, nice victory Monday yesterday for the Indianapolis Colts. And a large part of why they won is because they did something that I've been begging them to do all year, and that is run the football. It is the most important thing for this Colts offense. It's important for Anthony Richardson to run the football. It's important for Jonathan Taylor to run the football a lot. Jonathan Taylor is their best player. No way around it. He had 24 carries on Sunday, 25 touches total if you count the little 3-yard screen pass that he caught. Like, that has to continue. He needs 25 touches every single game. I get it. The run game wasn't great against the Jets, but Jonathan Taylor's the best player on your offense, and he needs to touch the ball as much as possible. Okay, he needs touches because he's a guy who's capable of breaking a game open any second. Okay, Anthony Richardson needs to continue to run the football as well. He had 10 carries, and he was successful, right? A lot of those came down at the goal line. You know, he's a big dude who's capable of running over smaller guys, getting him out on the edge and allowing him to do that. It's part of why the Colts won, right? That's how they scored 2 of their touchdowns on Sunday. It's like he's got to continue to run the football. It is a huge help to have him. Okay, the Colts have to continue to run the football, and our guy, and he's our guy because the Colts won on Sunday, our guy Shane Steichen echoed my thoughts yesterday.
I think overall it was good. You know, we started off running the ball there early, like we talked about. You know, and he was complaining. I think, like we said earlier after the press conference the other day, he was 7-9 there. You know, for about 100 yards, getting some nice completions, and I think, you know, running him a little bit gets him going as well, along with the rest of our football team. So we got to continue that momentum going forward.
One quick follow-up. How important is it to stay committed to the run? I know, like, JT got stonewalled a couple times, but just to give defenses that threat of the run, like how big was that to just kind of keep it balanced there, even in the second half a little bit?
Yeah, it's huge. You know, you don't want to ever get away from the run game. You know what I mean? Obviously, sometimes if you're down and you got to throw it, it's part of the game. But to not completely get away from it and have those options with you know, JT there and Anthony in the second half were big. But I thought our guys, you know, like we talked about, adjusting and throwing the football there in the second half when we needed to throw it and make a play was huge by our team.
Shane Steichen right there talking about the Indianapolis Colts win on Sunday and just the importance of running the football and staying committed to the run game. Because, like, it wasn't great. Jonathan Taylor ran the ball 24 times for only 57 yards, but it opens up other things. It was nice seeing the Colts stay committed to the run throughout that game, even though it wasn't always the most profitable play. It kept them in 3rd and 6 as opposed to 3rd and 12, 3rd and 11. So really productive there. I think it's a large part of why the offense was so productive. Anthony Richardson needs to continue to get carries as well, 8 to 12 a game. That's all I'm asking for. Okay, and I know some people don't like the idea of running Anthony Richardson, but the guy played 6 games in high school, 13 games in college, and he's started and finished 8 games in the NFL. This guy doesn't have a lot of miles on his body. He's 22 years old. If there is any time to run this guy, it is right now. While he's young, while he bounces back quickly. And look, young people tend to just stay healthier than older people. Just look at the 49ers. They're banged up all the time because most of the guys on their roster are older. If there's a time to run Anthony Richardson, it's right now because that can help your team move the football. When you look at, you know, early Josh Allen and early Lamar Jackson, their teams ran them a lot because they just weren't polished passers yet. But now that Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen have improved throughout their careers as passers, guess what? The teams aren't running them as much. 1, because they're older and they have more miles on their body. And 2, because they're better passers. Run Anthony Richardson now while he's learning how to play quarterback. Okay, in 5 years, if he winds up being the franchise guy and they see enough strides, don't run the ball with him. Okay, like let him create, you know, outside the pocket and those things. But at that point, 5 years down the road, you would think that Anthony Richardson has improved enough as a passer that you wouldn't need to run him 8 to 12 times a game. Okay, and I know that injuries are a concern with Anthony Richardson, but the injuries last year, 2 of them were concussions. Those happened to everybody. The other thing was an AC joint sprain in the shoulder. Those are avoidable if he slides. That is, I think, my one complaint from him on Sunday. He didn't slide. And look, like when you're down by the goal line, put your shoulder down, run over the small corner. I get that. Don't slide there. But like when you're not there, when you're at, the Jets 40, slide. Okay. Like the difference between the Colts being at the 40 and the 38-yard line, not that big of a difference there. Okay. So that's the one thing for him. If he just slides, then I think everyone would be cool with him running the ball. Now is the time to run him when he's young, not when he's 30. Okay. Hopefully 3 years from now, the Colts don't have to run him the way that they are right now because he'll just be more polished as a passer. But that is the path to victory for the Colts. They ran the football 35 times on Sunday. They need more of that. Okay. Games where you hand the ball off to Jonathan Taylor and give him 25 chances to make a game-altering play. More chances for Anthony Richardson, a highly athletic, and mobile quarterback, which is part of why the Colts drafted him. More opportunities for him to impact the game with his legs are good things for the Colts, especially since Anthony Richardson can be a little up and down in terms of the accuracy, which obviously he was way up on Sunday, and hopefully that continues. But if the Colts want to win these games, if they want to make a push for the playoffs, if they want to continue to score 28 points a night, like you have got to continue to run the football. That is what they need to do. Tonight, we've got college basketball. Cannot wait to watch Indiana. Purdue's game tonight. They're on the road. They're taking on a good Marquette team. Can't wait. Shaka Smart always has his guys ready to go. I don't think Indiana plays tonight. I'm checking that right now as we speak. But that game tonight is at 9:00 on the road. At Marquette. Yeah, 6th ranked Purdue. Jeez. At 15th ranked Marquette. Cannot wait to sit down on the couch really late at night and watch this game. I think it's going to be fascinating. This Purdue team just continues to find ways to win. And that is the name of the game. Win the games in front of you. That win over Alabama was huge, big enough for them to jump into the top 10. Indiana's still hanging out, being ranked number 16. They're, that's an interesting team, right? 3-0. We'll kind of see where they go from here. They play UNC Greensboro in 2 days, so that's Thursday. That sounds right. On the 21st, and then they've got about a week off before they head down to the Bahamas to start that battle for Atlantis. So college hoops is heating up as it always does around this time of the year. Purdue, don't turn the basketball over. Trey Kaufman-Wren, continue to score on the low post and hit a whole bunch of threes. If they do those three things, then they'll win. It's really that simple. Something else that's simple. Leave it here. Leave it here on 1430. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way here in 5 minutes, and then tune in tomorrow from 10 to noon. I'll be back on the air to talk to you about the college football playoff rankings. The Pacers didn't have time to get to them today, but they're struggling. I have thoughts on them. Tomorrow's show is going to be great, so tune in from 10 to noon. I'll talk to you guys then.